The COP28 UN Climate Summit is happening right now in Dubai. It's actually the largest gathering ever for the annual climate talks. And Desiree McGraw is there, Liberal M&A for Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, and she's also the official opposition critic for the environment and fight against climate change. And she joins us all the way from Dubai right now. Hello, Desiree. How are you?
I'm well, Natasha. How are you?
I'm well, too. Thank you for your time. I know you're 9 hours ahead there, so it's late. The UN Climate Summit, it all kicked off last night, I believe, with a meeting with Al Gore. And I recall you telling us in a previous interview that he's your longtime mentor. So I'm going to ask you about that in a moment. But I think I have to start with the kind of obvious question I know some people are wondering about. Yes, we know your title and your role, but why is it important for you to be there, to attend this summit? Because, I don't need to tell you, there's an awful lot going on here in Quebec right now, right? With Bill 15 and probably most importantly, the public sector strikes that so desperately need to be resolved. So why is it important for you to be there right now?
No question. And there are many important things happening both in the riding and in Quebec in general. And this is also important. So I've got great colleagues who are on those files. And I'm actually going into a caucus meeting very shortly. So I'm following everything very closely. But at the invitation of the government of Quebec and with the support of my interim leader, I am here to represent our National Assembly. I'm the only M&A who's not a government minister, and I'm here to listen, learn, participate, and represent. And I believe it's my duty. It's a duty that I have as the opposition critic, given the importance of the issues under discussion here at COP. I think we all know that climate change is a critical issue for the world and certainly for Quebecers, particularly after the summer that we've had. And it's important that governments take bold, decisive action and that we hold governments, including our own government in Quebec, to account for the commitments they will make and the commitments that they have made and that they will make at this COP.
Okay, and I will ask you a little bit more about Al Gore and about what you hope comes out of this summit. But perhaps we should just have a quick word on the situation here in Quebec. Do you have hope that the public sector strikes are going to be resolved, and you have confidence that your staff is kind of holding down the fort in that regard while you're away?
Well, absolutely. I have total confidence in my staff. If I were the lead on these issues, my colleague Myra Rizki as the lead, as with our chef, I have full confidence in my colleagues. And even when there was a power failure yesterday in NDG, we were on top of that. So it means that there's not a lot of sleep happening, so I can try to keep on top of all of these things. But I am hopeful that there will be a resolution. But we're not in government, and we think that the government, the CAC government, has completely mismanaged this. It's disrespectful to our frontline workers, our teachers, and our educators. And so, one needs to be hopeful, but the government has to change its tune and demonstrate respect for our public sector workers and deliver essential services to Quebecers.
All right. Thank you for that note. Now, tell us a little bit about the meeting with Al Gore last night. I know that you co-founded his climate project here in Canada and the Quebec delegation reception. So tell us how it went and what that was like.
Yeah, so it was great. It was actually a meeting of climate reality leaders from around the world. And as the co-founder of his Canadian climate reality project, I was there to be with some of the other climate leaders and had a great chat with Mr. Gore. It was the first time I'd seen him since I'd been elected, so he was very happy to see me go into active politics. And he had some words of advice as a former legislator himself, as a former senator. And, he's someone who has mentored me since I first met him at the Rio Earth Summit, where the original climate and biodiversity conventions were launched. And I've been following these conventions since that time, over 30 years ago, as a researcher and as a reporter. And I actually, the last time I was at a COP was on the Canadian delegation when Montreal hosted in 2005. Paul Martin was prime minister, and I remember having to leave the COP. I was a special advisor on international cooperation to give birth to my first son. I literally went to the hospital, and that son turns 18 on Friday. So God. Really coming full circle. And I'm here also for him and his brothers and their friends and the next generation to do what I can to fight climate change. It's why I went into politics, to set up the next generation for success. So for me, in addition to my duty to be here as the official opposition critic, there's also a very personal incentive to do what I can and this decisive decade for climate change, to fight climate change.
We're speaking with Desiree McGraw, a liberal M&A for Notre-Dame-de-Grâce. She's also the official opposition critic for the environment and the fight against climate change. I love what you just touched on there for kids, right? And you're living it firsthand. Kids have climate anxiety, which I think was a term that, I mean, it didn't even exist and certainly didn't mean anything to the vast majority of us. Do you feel like this next generation, because of that anxiety, will be more compelled to make the changes that have to be made?
Well, I think we don't have time to wait for the next generation. I actually don't believe in passing the buck to the next generation or paying lip service to them. My generation and those who came before are the ones who have created this mess, and we need to fix it in partnership with young people. And one of the ways to overcome apathy, anger, and anxiety is to take action. So to do it together. And so that's very much something that motivates me. And there are a lot of young people here. I just met with some of the Canadian young women who are on the Canadian delegation. I'll be meeting some more Quebec youth, Génération Climat Montréal. And so I believe in working in partnership with young people, but we don't have time to wait for them to change things. That's our responsibility. As I said, it's one of the reasons that I went into politics, is that we need to change things on a macro scale in a way that only governments can really do. And so I'm doing all I can, and that's why I feel so passionate about being here, notwithstanding some of the criticisms, is that we've got to do all we can.
So when you say notwithstanding some of the criticism, you mean for being in Dubai right now?
I think Dubai COPs themselves have come under criticism in terms of how effective they are.
Yeah.
The reality is the world's in a difficult place, because for 30 years, clearly any government anywhere in the world has not done enough. No one's done enough on this issue. And so now we're all confronted with difficult choices. And so it's there's criticisms of the COP itself, and I think some of those criticisms are legitimate. And I think people take different approaches. You can work in the system, outside of the system, and obviously as an elected official and opposition critic, I believe my role and my duty is to be here and to hold the government to account. And the hard work really is not at the COP, but it's after the COP, to make sure that governments actually implement the commitments they've made. If you look at the Paris Accord in 2015, where Canada played a leadership role, and my colleague and friend Catherine McKenna, who I just was with today at this awesome panel on women leading on climate, that agreement was to hold global average long-term temperatures to 1.5 degrees Celsius. That's the point beyond which scientists say climate change becomes really dangerous and completely unmanageable. Unfortunately, if you look at the commitments that countries collectively have made, that brings us to almost twice that, to close to 3 degrees Celsius. So there's a lot more work to do. And where the rubber hits the road, yes, it's general agreements, but it's the implementation of these agreements. And that's where national and subnational governments come into play, civil society, but also people like me in opposition, to press governments to honor the commitments and to be bold in ambition. And Quebec has the potential to truly lead. It was just announced today that Quebec will co-chair what's called BOGA, which is Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance. I've been here to witness that. So this is good news for Quebec, and we have to congratulate the government when it does good things, and make sure that when we're offside, we're also speaking truth to power.
I mean, if I'm, from afar, from here in Montreal, if I'm looking at COP28 and thinking what I really genuinely hope comes out of it, it's a true sense of urgency and action. And I mean, it sounds like that is the MO. I find myself talking about that a lot in general lately these days, that there's a lack of sense of urgency with so many things that we're directly affected by. Great to hear from you there in Dubai.
Thanks so much, Natasha. I appreciate it.
That's Desiree McGraw, Liberal M&A for Notre-Dame-de-Grâce. She's talking to us from COP28 in Dubai.